Thanks for joining us
Pleasure.
on our ScaleUp program. So we're here today just to really kind of learn from you. So I'll kind of introduce you kind of informally, but Jill was until very recently the CEO at Click Travel, and took them on a remarkable growth journey to just, I think, north of 200 million, if I'm correct, right in saying.
Yes.
A remarkable kind of scale up journey. And yeah, we're here to kind of learn from Jill today. So before we go into kind of Q&A, Jill, I'm just going to hand over to you to kind of do a better introduction than I ever could, and just to give people a background to your kind of career to date.
All right. So just a quick background before we get into questions then. I mean, I would definitely regard myself as a scale up CEO. So, I am not in any way, shape or form a founder. And I think, because in fact, I am completely in awe of founders and what they do. And so when I read your bios today, and when preparing for this session, I just thought it looked like the most amazingly interesting cohort. So I'm very interested in what I can learn from you as well as what you can learn from me. But I think there are different challenges on different stages of a journey. And one of the real sort of inflection points for the business is when almost it gets a little bit too big for the founders to just manage on their own, really. I mean, when I got to Click, I remember one of the founders saying to me, and I'm sure this will resonate with you as well. He said, there's nothing in this business that I can't solve by pulling the odd all-nighter or two. I could solve any of the business's problems just by working through the night. Now, A, nobody really wants to be doing that, but B, that is a totally unscalable proposition, really. And it's probably a position you've all been in. But ultimately, the point about scaling a business is you have to get into a position where you don't have to do that. Because heaven forbid, should one of you in the future run under a proverbial bus, then the business has to go on without you. And in fact, very sadly, that actually happened to Click, because one of our founders very sadly died in 2018, very suddenly. But thankfully, we'd got ourselves into a position where we were able to carry on the business and not miss a beat, really, in terms of our scale up plans, our growth and our customer service at that point. So that was a very different proposition when I joined Click. I joined Click in 2012. At that point, the business had just made 300k profit. Our turnover is always a bit misunderstanding. We seem like a very, very big business because we're a business travel company, and we put the cost of all of everybody's travel through our books. So we're actually turning over 30 million at that point. And at the time at which I hopped off, which was in February this year, we just posted 267 million. But crucially, we'd also posted 8 million operating profit, probably about 9 million EBITDA. And without COVID, we would have been a 10 million pound business. I became a CEO of Click in 2015. We went through an investment round in 2018 where the BGF took a 12.5% stake, and then the business continues to this day and will continue to be very successful once the COVID crisis is over. So when I joined, it was doubling its turnover every year. And to be honest with you, the wheels were coming off. I mean, the founders very astutely realized that they needed somebody to come in and run the operation for them, because we had a lot of blue chip customers, Talk, Whitbread, we have these customers today still. But the wheels were coming off the operation. The telephone system didn't work. People were turning up to work worse for wear after a heavy night the night before. But people would come in and ring the doorbell, and somebody would say, "Oh, Jill, they've come to cut the electricity off because we haven't paid the bill." Suppliers would fly over from Paris to come and see the founders, and they'd forgotten and gone on holiday. So it was just a sort of slightly chaotic environment. But from the sense of, if you've been in that environment before and you've worked in it, lots and lots of low-hanging fruit in terms of how to fix those things. So it was a question, as I came in as operations director, of really fixing the infrastructure of the operation so we could manage to deal with the scaling customer base that we had. And in our terms, that meant looking after our customer service, making sure that we could service our customers, make sure the telephony worked, that we had the infrastructure to scale in that way. And crucially, recognizing the people in the business who could scale with it and the people who perhaps couldn't. And for the people who had perhaps met their limits, and if they were managers, putting somebody in over their heads so that those people could scale with the business. And I'm really proud to say that all the people who I did this are still with Click. So all the people who I put somebody in over the top of them, they're all still there because they could learn and grow from the people that we put in, and the business was growing and there was always opportunities for them. So really getting hold of that, but also, taking advantage of the amazing culture that we had at Click to, get our name out there in a number of different ways. I mean, I recognized that we had very strong levels of engagement, and I wanted to keep that as we grow. It's very easy when you're a 35, 40 person business to have very strong engagement. You know everybody, after all, you're more like a family. But when you get to being a 250 people business and you've got people working virtually, which we had even pre-pandemic, a lot of our people work virtually, that's a totally different proposition. But I knew that we had a very, very good culture at Click, and I wanted to make sure that we retain that whilst we grew. So we entered the best companies to work for in 2012, and we got straight in there with 3-star accreditation. We have retained that every single year. And in fact, I've just seen their press release. And I'm going to take all credit for that, even though I've left the organisation. We are now 12th in the best mid-sized companies out of 100. We are the 6th best in the Midlands, and we are 2nd best in business services this year. So, and that, by the way, is after we did a collective redundancy consultation and made over 100 people redundant, which I did before I left. So to retain those levels of engagement as you grow and as you downsize is quite stunning. Other things we did, though, in terms of getting national recognition was all around things like Tech Nation, if you could possibly get into that, that's absolutely amazing. And the Tech Track, we were 4 years in the Tech Track. Then we sort of got promoted to the sort of Profit Track, the Fast Track, for at least 4 years in the Profit Track, Fast Track. These things get you recognised. And so by the time at which we did our BGF investment in 2018, we had about 23 private equity companies knocking on our door saying, we'd really like to invest in your business. So we had no shortage of people who wanted to invest in us at that point. I took over responsibility for sales after a couple of years and got extremely clear about our proposition. It was really, really important to us that we focused on what we were really good at, and we targeted those customers that we could truly delight with our service, and honing down on that and getting really, really clear on what our proposition was, which was that we wanted to look after customers who spent more than £500,000 in business travel and up to 10 million in business travel. And so if somebody came to us with a £200 million account, we turn it away. Similarly, if they came to us with a £20,000 account, we turn it away. And so I got our sales team and our sales proposition incredibly clear. And in the meantime, we were developing our architecture. We had and this is a really, really important point, actually. Things might be going really, really well in terms of scaling and growing. But if you've got something, a little gremlin or something which actually, I've got to sort this out. And if I don't sort it out, I won't be able to do the next funding round, or I won't be able to float my business, or I won't be able to sell. Then you've got to really attack that. And for that, it was our technology and our monolithic architecture and the way in which Click was actually built, we had to change. So we totally changed our architecture. Don't ask me too much about it because I'm not an expert on this stuff. But we developed a far more hybrid architecture, which was much easier to work with. And we had to re-implement every single one of our customers onto that new architecture. It wasn't a system upgrade. It was a total new implementation. That was a huge project that we did over the course of 3 years. We didn't lose a single customer, and we successfully migrated every customer with not one stop or stopping of service at all during that time. Customer service was very, very important to us. And I think it was really, people always say to me, what was the trick, or what did you do? And the very simple thing is we kept our existing customers and we took on more customers. It was really that straightforward. So we had a 98% customer retention rate. We grew organically throughout. We didn't do an acquisition, but that's a whole different story. Whether that was the right thing or not is another debate. But we got into Trustpilot, And we have I mean, I don't know whether you've looked our reviews up on Trustpilot. We have 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. We also have 5-star reviews on Glassdoor. We are fairly obsessed with our reputation, and we had some tips and tricks and ways in which we got that 5-star Trustpilot score. And so that we, when people asked us why they should use us, we were very simply able to say we have great technology, backed up by the fact that we're Tech Nation, Tech Track, and also we've won a lot of industry awards around our technology, but also we've got great customer service. Go on to Trustpilot, go and have a look, talk to any customer you like. I was always very open. I said, I can give you some references you want, but actually, why don't you just phone up somebody you know and ask about Click? Because I was pretty confident that there wasn't a customer out there who wasn't going to be nice about us, because that was our reputation. So that led us very easily into achieving an investment with the BGF, and that was an incredible experience. And they were very, very supportive through some very, very difficult times, because we lost our founder during that journey. And then, as I said, we have had a very, very bumpy ride because of COVID. Revenues are 95% down. But yet, in spite of that, we still managed to achieve incredible levels of customer service and incredible, employee engagement scores, despite having to make, very sadly, over 100 people redundant last year. Holding on to their software engineers during that time, of course, is a very, very big challenge. But luckily, we kept our people with us. We had a very strong strategy. We tied people in with share options, and so the future of Click is very bright indeed. Is that enough of an overview for people, Yanis, or have I gone on too long or too short? If you want me to say more, I can, but I'm aware this is meant to be more of a Q&A.
No, that's been really helpful. I mean, I'll kind of open it up to everyone, really. And there you go. I could see Theo kind of nodding away as you were going through that. So I'm going to go to Theo now and allow him to ask the first question. So over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Yanis. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Really, really useful. I just had a question where you talk about the implementation of your architecture stuff. I promise it won't be a technical question, but my question was more strategically. You mentioned that took about 3 years, which obviously sounds sort of fairly typical. Did you find that quite a stressful period? Because I'm assuming that by process of elimination would have diverted a lot of resources, fiscally and otherwise, away from the growth activity, I'm assuming, because you can't do one without the other. So I'm assuming that was a very stressful time. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about that period, because I'm sort of in that sort of phase now where we're rapidly scaling up the technology to deal with demand. It'd just be interesting hearing a little bit more about that, if you wouldn't mind expanding.
Yeah. I mean, new platform became, the sort of groan word at Click, because it was a project that just went on too long. It was, stressful in the sense that we just didn't know whether we were ever going to get it finished. It also was very, very difficult to keep the software engineers focused on it, because software engineers, I don't know about your software engineers, but our software engineers like doing new things, including, frankly, the CTO, who'd, and even diverting his he wasn't able just to focus on working on this new platform. So he'd get up in the morning and go, oh, actually, I'm going to build a new expenses system today, and then he'd steal 6 engineers to go and build an expenses system, which would then be half built. And so it was actually I think the hardest thing of all was focus, and just making it very clear that this was the key objective, and until it was done, and until every single customer was migrated and happy, and we weren't going to lose any customers during that process, even though it was extremely painful. Nobody was going to rest, and so that single-minded focus, I think with more focus, we would have got it done in a shorter space of time. But, I think when it's brilliant when you're a small business, because you're almost naive. And when you start these things, you almost underestimate everything. But thank God you do, really, because otherwise you probably never do it. But, we never anticipated how long it would take and just how complicated it would be. But also, I think it's just keeping very, very focused on what you are going to put in the new platform and what you aren't. Because obviously, it's an opportunity for you to have a clear out. And if there's features and things which aren't helpful for you and take a long time to maintain, perhaps you can talk your customers out of those in the future. I mean, we did a bit of that. Our account managers were very good at saying to customers, you know how you always did it this way? Well, this system's amazing. It doesn't quite do it like that now. It does it like this, but this is going to blow your mind. And by the way, let's introduce you to a customer who's on the new platform and loving it. And so things like that. It's an opportunity for you to really think about what the product is that you want in the future, that you want to move forward with. But you've always got to take your customers with you, because there's no point having something that they're not going to like. So, you know, there's that element of compromise, particularly if you're working in an enterprise architecture world, you know, where you've got large customers that are really quite demanding. Slightly different if you're more of a SaaS business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Jonas, can I have a cheeky follow-up question? Is that okay?
Oh, you sound like this is a Downing Street press conference.
Is that all right? I won't say next slide, please, but the cheesy thing was, so in that period, did you adjust your sales proposition at all? Like, did that reshape your commercial offering, or was it just a straight, back end?
Absolutely. And I mean, the fights that we had with the sales team over what they needed in order to sell the product compared to what they had. And actually, the key thing we did, which was I think it was the right decision, but it scared the life out of the salespeople, is we made them start selling the new product before it was kind of totally ready. So they were very comfortable in their groove of selling the old product. But the more customers we were implementing on the old product, the more we were building up a legacy of problems, because then we had to re-implement them onto the new. So we said, it stops now. 1st of February, you're selling the new product. You're not selling the old problem. Forget that. That's the past. You've got to get your head around it. And with salespeople, it's very much about taking them with you and getting their heads around it. Once they got their heads around it, they were okay. Well, I think it takes a completely different skill set to start a business and get it off the ground and sort of work all those hours and, mortgage your house and, put yourself at risk in that way, compared to when you join a business that's actually already growing and probably, by virtue of the fact that they can afford someone like you, actually doing quite well. But then I think where I think the skills of someone like me come into play is recognizing the need to give up the reins. And I think that's a point at which a lot of founders struggle. They struggle with delegation, they struggle with not doing everything themselves, and they struggle with giving up that little bit of control. I'm working with a business at the moment where, they've done very, very well. In fact, they've just got a PE investment, but, majority PE investment, but one of the founders is still coding. And, there's not that many software engineers in the business. Now, it was actually quite interesting, the point at which what Simon, our CTO, ended up doing in order to get himself away from coding was he bought a new laptop and he just didn't put any of the tools on the new laptop. And that was how he stopped him and sort of basically binned the old laptop. And so he wasn't physically able to access the stuff that meant that he was coding. Of course, he was overseeing everything. He was still very much in charge of the product roadmap. But in terms of actually doing the day-to-day, he just wasn't doing it anymore.
I think that's really interesting, just almost breaking those boundaries to kind of still be a part of things, but handing over the reins. Another thing that I was curious about, and a few other people were, you talked about the really refining your proposition, and the way you described it was very simple. I imagine it wasn't as simple to get to that point. Can you talk about how you kind of refine that proposition over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a question of looking at profitability. So when you look at the lower end of the spectrum, the customers, which you can easily win, that are going to spend 20k a year with you, frankly, once you've taken one phone call, that's the entire year's profit down the tubes. So looking at that and being very hard-nosed about these customers aren't actually making us any money, and binning them and not taking on any new ones would be the first thing. The second thing is, when you go up the scale and you're trying to look at more complexity, is to look at where your real skills are and where your USPs are, and the areas, and also, frankly, the things you're not prepared to compromise on. Because as you go higher up the food chain, you will find that there are some customers that are so demanding that they want to bend you out of shape in terms of your proposition. And so you have to be very strong in terms of, no, this is what we will do. This is what we stand for, really. And this is what we will do. And this is what we won't do. So I remember looking, at a tender for the Royal Mail, for example. huge business, would have, increased our turnover significantly in the following year, but they wanted a financial model that we didn't offer, and they wanted implants. They wanted people to sit in their office effectively, and we've never done that, and we didn't want to do it, so we just no bid it. And so it's actually being very, very confident about turning away business that's going to take you off track, and you're going to lose focus by doing it. And at the same time, making sure that all the business you're doing is either significantly increasing your growth if profit isn't your goal at the moment, or is profitable.
I think having that kind of profit mindset is so important. I think it really brings clarity to thinking. I certainly found that. Sam, I want to come to you, and your business is one that focuses very much on the vision. I'm sure you've got a few questions for Jill on that cultural side of it, but also kind of the kind of vision of Click Travel as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Thanks very much for giving us that background as well. Really interesting, and always interesting how the challenges constantly expand. One thing I'm really interested in is, Yanis has quite rightly pointed out that for us, storytelling and vision is important because of we're very focused on environment and social impact education, and working towards helping people create communities and then educate people through learning experiences. A key thing for us is how to make a big topic simpler. And when you talked about refining and getting down to a place of, you were saying that your customers are this amount, I think it was 500 million rather than 200 million. You were quite strong around that, and it can be quite, especially when you have one of the biggest weaknesses I have personally, happy to share vulnerably, is seeing opportunities. And the thing is to make sure you're not always going after everything, in kind of my experience so far. And it sounds like you were very clear to cut the line. How did you go through that process? How did you get to a place of strength to say, no, this is absolutely where we're going to stick and we're not going to go any further down, even if there are a lot of opportunities there?
It was a question of getting very clear as a board, and also all signing up to it, and then being very clear with the sales team as well, and to say this is the business that you're going to get rewarded for winning, and the rest of it you're not going to get rewarded for. I mean, somebody asked me this question the other day, and I have to say I don't remember finding it that hard. But I think it's just a question of complete clarity. If you're incredibly clear, like we had a financial amount, they have to spend 500k on business travel, otherwise we're not talking to them. And then at the top level, it was like 10 million. And within those parameters, obviously, there's always little bits of things that might change as you go along. But just getting everybody very clear. I had the opposite problem. But just before I left, we were presented with we decided that we wanted to move slightly up the food chain. And we were presented with a very large, very, very big household name to tender for. And I couldn't get the sales team to do it. I mean, the sales team was saying, Jill, this isn't our core competency. It's not our proposition. Why are you asking us to do this? And I kept saying, come on, let's have a go. And we probably won't win it. So, it doesn't matter, but let's just take a risk. And getting them to do it was like, because we'd ingrained into them, this is the core proposition. This is what we care about. But I think your business sounds like one where you can be very clear in your purpose. You can very much have an emotional connection with the customers and really think hard about who you want to work with, and on that basis, really. But I think being able to have a story a story and a purpose is very useful in an organization. I've been working with an organization recently, and I asked them during the course of one of the workshops to tell their story to me, because I didn't know them that well, right from the start, and the ups and the downs, and what's been good and what's not been good. And I was surprised at how hard they found that, actually. And I think it's always really, really useful to have your story to hand, because it's a very nice emotional connection with your customer or your investor or whoever you're speaking to. But, you will be asked to reel it out, particularly, you go and sit down at Tech Nation or whatever, and they say, right, what do you do? And you need to be, it's the elevator pitch, but also where you've come from, why you do it, why you care about it. And having that additional purpose, which obviously your business is very purpose-led, is fabulous. It's got everything that has.
Thank you very much. So that's it's an important element towards the narrative of sharing why you exist.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Great stuff.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to go to Chris Thompson next. So Chris, over to you, and then we'll go to Rich Westman afterwards.
Sure, thanks, Yanis. Hi, Jill. Pleased to meet you.
Hi, pleased to meet you.
My question is a bit about the business model, and stopping short of going to sort of Click Travel and having a look at it and from a client perspective. I was wondering if over the course of your tenure, the kind of core commercial model changed. And really what I'm getting at is the sort of positioning between kind of maybe license fees or a percentage of revenues, and did it change or did it shift over the time?
Yeah. And I mean, the short answer to that is we tried over and over again to change our business model, because we knew that being dependent on transaction fees was not ideal. And that, we tried to move towards a SaaS-based model where you paid the customer paid a license fee, and then, all the bookings were effectively free. The way our business model is, and the way most business travel is charged at the moment is, you book a train, you pay a fee, and it's more simple. It's less simple than that, but you book a hotel, you pay a fee, and also we get some commission from the supply chain as well. But moving to a license fee, and we tried very hard to implement a SaaS-based product, which where the customer could sign up online, implement themselves, and just pay a license fee. Where you fix that license fee was terrifically hard to judge, and then actually getting customers to find you and implement themselves we found very difficult. But we were doing very well with that and starting to get traction on our customers when COVID hit. So we had to abandon it because we didn't really have the marketing costs to put behind it. But I think the challenge with moving commercial models is you've got to take your customers with you. If you work in a market where, for example, you're winning stuff by tender and they're saying, oh, by the way, and here's the template with the pricing that you have to fill in at the back. There's nothing you can do. If you don't fill it in the way they want it, you have to no bid. And so, you wouldn't have any customers if you did. But there's way in which you can, disrupt a market to such an extent that you can dominate but people have got to be wanting to come with you on that journey. And in business travel, it's a rather old-fashioned market. And I always said, until the procurement people who are buying business travel change, and we have a different type of procurement person who sees the benefit of buying things online and license fees, etc., I don't think we'll move the market. And certainly we hadn't at the time at which I left.
I think that's really interesting, tailoring the model to the procurement personality. It's sort of obvious, but not what we all do. So thanks for that. It's appreciated.
Yes, I mean, I always felt, if a customer asks for something as much as possible without bending yourself out of shape, if you are in some way able to say yes, what we used to do with tenders and requests that we didn't really want to do was this. They'd say, can you do this ridiculous approval process, which is an absolute arse and blah, 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 blah. And we'd say, yes, we can do that. Absolutely, if you want it. What we find most of our customers like and prefer is this model. And then we basically beautifully set out the simplicity of the way we wanted to do it. And we just persuade them. So we wouldn't say no, we'd just persuade them. I mean, there were times where I did say to customers, I remember one, customer, very, very well-known delivery customer, not Royal Mail, because I said we no bid that, and a different one. And I went to see them, and they were using an absolutely crazy process with their travel management technology. And I did say to them, I have to be honest with you, if you want to go ahead on that basis, we will not work with you. However, we have a superb process which will work brilliant in this organization. If you need me to come in and sell it to your stakeholders, I will do that. But just be aware that we're out effectively if you continue with this process. And we won it on that basis. We persuaded them through our arguments and through setting it out simply how to do it, and then they went along with it, and they're still a customer today. Yeah, interesting. Educate the customer, huh? Oh, totally. That has to happen all the time, And why should they be experts? That's probably not what they're paid for.
Absolutely. Rich, I'm going to come to you now.
Hi, Jill.
Hello.
It's a little bit leading on from where Chris finished there, but we as a business for many years were focused at the enterprise end of the market, and we're in the wellbeing space, so very competitive. And what we found a year ago now was effectively the lead times and decision-making times of these enterprise clients, combined with the fact the contract sizes weren't that high, was really stifling us as a business. And fortunately, I say we're one of those businesses that, as dare I say, benefited from the move to remote working and COVID. We've found a bit of a niche in the more SME space. But the challenge I'm having now is obviously the way that you generate leads and the way that you take those clients along the sales process is very different. And you touched on it there about whether we're effectively moving to more of a SaaS proposition than we were previously. So it's really, how did you, I suppose, manage both ends of the market, if you like? And you've touched on it a little bit, that you said no to a lot. We can't afford to say no to some of the enterprise level clients at the moment because they effectively pay the bills. But we know in a business process, we've got to almost flip the model on the head. So those big enterprise clients are just the icing on the cake, but we've got a really, really stable footing underneath, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's where your digital marketing comes into its own, really. If you can get really good at digital marketing, we never got into a position where we could sign a customer up online and they would implement themselves. It was like the Holy Grail, and we never did it. But what we did get to was a position where a lot of customers were coming to us because we had quite a strong reputation, and also together with a strong content management and a digital marketing campaign that really targeted those people that you wanted to speak to. Then you came to the point where you had we used to call these people chosen ones. They had turned up and they had raised their hand and said, "I'm interested in buying from you," and we'd call these people chosen ones. I don't know how that title came about. I think somebody just invented it and it stuck. So every board meeting we would report on the number of chosen ones we'd had that month, which is basically marketing qualified leads. And I suppose that's the way in which we aimed to go down the food chain in terms of our proposition. And I think probably if you're going to try and acquire lots of customers cheaply, it's probably the only way you're going to manage to do it. And I also do hugely sympathize with the long processes and decision-making processes that these businesses take. I mean, we had one supermarket that will remain nameless that is, incredibly well known on the budget side. And honestly, I think it was 18 months before they finally signed a contract with. The only thing I would say is once they've done it, they never leave. If you can look after them, they never really leave. And the tender processes in the future are more of a formality. But actually, but the other thing I would consider is the public sector, getting on something like G-Cloud. And I don't quite know what your business is, but don't ignore the public sector, because although the margins are low, it's great for propping up your business in a recession. And also, they go very sticky, those customers. And if you can win them and service them reasonably cheaply, you can make money out of it.
Really interesting. And I guess just to continue on that, I got the impression from the start that early days in particular, a lot of your lead gen would have been through reputation and referral and that sort of stuff. You mentioned that you've added some digital marketing elements to that. What did they look like? Content being key, I guess, but
so yes, initially we didn't do digital marketing, so we was all, well, we had some literally people cold calling, and still do, by the way. That is hopefully they're not too cold, but sometimes it's cold. So that kind of thing, referrals, tenders, that we'd be trying to get on tender lists all the time, get a reputation, so we got on a tender list, and then work our way up from then. And then we hired a content manager, and we just got them to put out meaningful, helpful content. Definitions, I don't know whether you know this, but apparently this is a good trick. This might have changed, but a few years ago, if you just came up with every single definition of anything around well-being and then shoved it in a blog, that will get you higher up the Google rankings. So we do definition of travel policy, definition of pre-trip approval, definition of travel management. I mean, I wouldn't want that job, by the way. I feel quite sorry for them. But literally, we were just hammering out definitions the whole time and getting really, so if somebody then searches for, oh, I need to improve my travel policy, it would come up with click travel on the front page, which is not where we normally would be if people search for business travel. So it's a cheap way of getting up the Google rankings. Yeah, so content, also awards, going to awards dinners. If you can get into something like Tech Track, Fast Track, you know, these places are stuffed full of business opportunities for the right type of business. And not everybody. I mean, if you're like, you know, if you do patio floors or so, you know, that's not where you're going to find people. But certainly in business services, you know, I never, ever went to one of those dinners without coming away with a lead. And I won some amazing business that way.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most underutilized things in businesses, especially through scaling, that whole PR side, and working with the press, winning awards, you know, creating a personal brand as, you know, within that organization. You know, it's you know, essentially, if you get it right, it's free marketing. So I think there needs to be time. Obviously, it's not free in the sense you've got to dedicate resource to it, but yeah, I'm a big advocate for that side. So really interesting to see how you've leveraged that, Jill. I'm going to come to Chris. I can see you've got your hand up, so I want to come to you in a minute. But first, I want to come to another Chris. I want to come to Chris Woods and Stu, and bring you into the conversation to ask Jill a question.
Stu, do you want to go?
Well, no, to be honest, because Rich stole my thunder, and I was going to ask around the digital marketing piece, to be honest. So yeah, I was all ready to go with the digital marketing question, and Rich asked it, so I'm okay at the moment.
Well, I've got a question, Jill, and it's been fascinating actually, just listening to you. So, you know, firstly, thank you for your time, taking time out to speak to us. And we CyberQ Group, so I'm the founder of CyberQ Group, and you know, I'm not going to shock you, we do cybersecurity. And what I'm interested, and I suppose, you know, what we do again is protect data, protect reputation, really, and peace of mind. But one of the questions that I have, when we first started 5 years ago, so when I came back from the Middle East, we won our first customer, which was DPD, a big logistics firm. And we were a startup in effect, you know, it was literally two of us just running around. And that was our £1.6 billion turnover beast. And on the back of that, we've won some more billion-dollar business that are dealing with us. But now teams have got the SMEs, we've got some medium, not small businesses, to be fair. It tends to be, you know, at minimum, you know, £2 to £5 million. So we're at a point now of our growth, and the growth that we're trying to do this year is straight the way up, of having different types of businesses at different scales. You know, the bigger businesses understand cybersecurity. They understand if they get hacked, you know, it's going to cost them shares. The CEO is going to get sacked, and they don't want the bad PR. The medium to smaller businesses kind of appreciate it, but unfortunately they really appreciate when they get hacked, Jill. That's when and we do instant response as well, which is great, so we get paid out of that. It's, you know, but going back to your point in your question, when did you realize in your business that actually you need to focus on this area, and what kind of metrics and thinking did you use to do that?
I mean, I don't know whether you use personas in terms of your customers. So, you know, actually, and, you know, if you could get really creative about this and have almost cartoon drawings of, you know, this is this type of customer, this is the actual person who, because there's always a person behind these purchases who is going to buy from you. Or do they like cycling at the weekend, or do they like, you know, are they likely to have a family, that kind of thing, which really focuses you on what they care about and what they don't care about. I mean, and the other thing I would say in terms of us ending up with two different business models, so we have the SaaS product for the SMEs and then the larger customers for the enterprise, is we did have two completely separate teams working on that. I couldn't put my sales team onto winning very small SaaS customers because they would love them to death. And we couldn't afford to love them to death because they didn't make us enough money. So we needed a different type of sales process that was much more transactional. And so it was about, you know, it was about really thinking about what they what the requirements were for those customers, but also what you could afford to give them, because there will be a point, if they're low margin, where you need to walk away because you've loved them to death and almost, you know, you've spent all your money servicing them. So I would say, you know, focus really hard on the personas of who you're looking to work with, and then maybe have separate teams, because and don't put your most expensive salespeople on the cheapest deals.
That's great advice. No, thank you very much, Jill. And one final question. I know Yanis only gave me one, but I'll take Stu's ones as well. I'm sure he won't mind. Did you Click Travel? Are you international? Because we've just raised some money in the US, and obviously we've got our Centre of Excellence in the Philippines. We're noticing different culture, and we're on the US. We just want a US deal, and we have a phrase of "keep me honest." You know, like keep me honest. And if you say that to a US client, that's like, well, you guys don't know what you're doing. And APAC, and we haven't signed any deals, but we've just got a partner out in Japan. And I just want to get your feedback on how, if Click Travel is international, how did you get around? Because we are a Birmingham business based in the UK. But I mean, ultimately, how did you get around that? And what was the nuances? What was the biggest nuances that you found with the US market and the APAC market compared to the UK?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is we didn't ever get as far as launching an international product. So we never sold to a customer in the US, a US product. It's very complicated in business travel to do that. So that was kind of like, it was the next stage. So we had a team on it when COVID hit. However, we did win customers. I mean, our largest customer was a very large gambling conglomerate that insisted that we looked after them in all 16 markets, even though we were quite nervous about doing that for lots of reasons. But I guess it's just about getting everybody on the same side and being clear about what you can do and what you can't do. But I probably can't help you too much on the cultural challenge of that, because it's not something that I've been through, certainly not a Click anyway.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you for your feedback anyway. Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Yanis, hand back to you.
I can connect you up with someone who's done exactly that. And then on the persona side of it as well, anyone that hasn't done a kind of persona mapping exercise, let me know, and I can kind of match you up with someone who's a bit of an expert in that field, so they can kind of come and help you kind of understand who your ideal customers are, and to Jill's point, the human behind the actual business persona as well, which is really, really interesting. So Don, I can see you've got your hand up, so I'm going to come to you next, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, thank you. Jill, sorry, I was a few minutes late, so I missed your introduction. But I think what I got on the tail end was around the recruitment of software developers and making some redundancies and ensuring that you kept them during some of that downturn through share options, etc. So for me, we're very much of a technical company. It's where did you how did you go about recruiting your initial software development team? Are they mainly in the UK? Are they overseas? What were some of the challenges in growing that team? And I think you covered off how you kept them, retained them through share options.
Yeah, I mean, it's when it comes to software engineers, and I mean, you people will know this better than me. You know, they don't just want to work for an organization that can, you know, give them a paycheck at the end of the month. They want to work somewhere where they feel they're doing good, where they feel they've got a clear purpose, where their contribution to the organization is understood, and where they feel they can grow. So, I mean, you know, there is so much more to recruiting a software engineer than recruiting, you know, a senior account manager or something like that. But I think in terms of where we got to, I mean, our big USP for years was virtual working. Of course, it isn't anymore. But you know, we were enlightened in that respect, and a lot of software engineers came to us because we offered them the ability to work from home, and so we were able to do that. We went through a period of outsourcing some of our software engineering to I think it was an Eastern European a company that was in Eastern Europe. But what we found was, it was actually quite expensive, and it was harder to quality control. We did hire a few people from overseas, but generally we stuck to recruiting in the UK. And it was really, really hard all the time getting good people and keeping them. I think we have an extraordinary culture, which I think people were very attracted to. And then the other thing we did was, halfway through our sort of growth journey, we hired a director of engineering from Skyscanner. Now, she actually left the organisation a couple of years ago, but she then, Skyscanner is obviously quite a large organisation that a lot of people, it's grown, it's been incredibly successful, but for some people it's grown too big, and so culturally those people wanted to leave and work somewhere smaller. So we managed to attract a fairly large number of people from Skyscanner, and so we ended up with almost like a Scottish office, but we never had an office in Scotland. But we had a lot of engineers in Edinburgh and Glasgow as a result of that, because reputationally we had a great reputation as somewhere to work. And as a result of that, we attracted people, and also really interesting technology as well. And being involved in things like Birmingham Tech and Tech Week and winning awards for your tech is absolutely the way to do that. Plus, if you can get your engineers to write blogs and sort of, get them enthused around, what you're doing, then obviously you spread the word. I mean, when I left, we had a key objective, which was fame. And I know that sounds like a strange objective, but we want to be famous, and we want to be famous for being a superb organisation for business travel, but also a superb tech company, because we knew that in terms of our multiples and our value, we needed to be, up there in terms of, right at the forefront of technology. And so it was a continuing obligation of everybody in the organization to be developing that sort of fame, and that very much pointed, and helped us with recruitment. I mean, the other thing we did pretty early on is set up a graduate scheme. So we set up a scheme called Click Start, and we took on 2 or 3 engineering graduates and a couple of other graduates every year. Ran an assessment centre, ran a program for them, looked after them. I mean, they're not all of them work out, but if you can run it, anybody can set up a graduate scheme. And, and once you've got a little bit of a reputation for it, then you will get great people right at the start of their career, where they're maybe a little bit better value for money, and then you can grow them into really great, really, really good resource for you in the future. And they get a great journey as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you.
And I think also, just to add on to what Jill said there about graduates, check out some of the boot camps that operate around the region as well, like School of Code, like Generation. They're taking people who have had different careers, some really high profile, and they're now reskilling as coders. And actually you get kind of, double for your money, really, because you're getting someone that understands different areas of the business, as well as being able to kind of code, and actually that richness can add a lot in terms of innovation. The other thing I've seen work really well is time for innovation. So allowing kind of people in engineering to have the freedom to explore things. They all like to create. So carving out, I know Google did a big thing where I think it was like 20% of an engineer's time was allowed to work on new things, ideas and creating new innovation. Obviously not all of you can afford 20% of an engineer's time. I get that, but working out ways to make them feel valued. To Jill's point, getting them to do thought leadership, I think is key. So I'm just looking around the virtual room. Nigel, I don't think we've heard from you. So Nigel, can we come to you for a question to kind of wrap up? And then Chris, I don't know if you've still got a question. I know your hand's not raised now, but we can come to you finally, if that's all right.
Lovely, yeah.
Yeah, hi Jill. Sorry, I missed yours as well because I got the wrong invite. I got it all mixed up. I was doing a job in Birmingham today, so I apologise for that. But you've already given me some fabulous ideas. So just to say what we do, we've created almost like a new a niche within a niche. So we use drones and a software program to recognise invasive species. So Japanese knotweed is one of those.
Wow.
So that's what we've created. It's in its infancy, but you wouldn't believe the inquiries we're getting. So your point that really resonated with me was the personas. So we have a whole range of clients ranging from Jaguar Land Rover to local authorities, and your point about local authorities and getting on the G Cloud, we've started doing that, so we're working into that right now. How would you say we would go about modeling the personas of our clients, given that nearly every one of them and the buyers seem to have different agendas?
Right, so you're saying every client you have seems to want something slightly different, or have a slightly from a different perspective. Okay, so I mean, if that really is the case, I would say that was probably quite a big challenge. I would probably challenge you on whether that really was the case, because I think you know, I mean, certainly in our world, I had a big argument once with the team when they said, oh, we need to get in with FDs, we need to get into with HR directors, and I got my operations director to list the key contact for our top 50 customers, and to a person, every single one of them was a procurement person. So I said, you can forget, this is all very nice, but at the end of the day, the people we're dealing with day in, day out are procurement people. So get to know and understand what procurement people do. Hang out where they hang out. Let's go and visit them at their procurement functions and things like that. And, let's write articles for their procurement magazine. So, I would say, think about that. But if I was in your position, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, I'd probably invite a few of them out to dinner. I'd probably, and when we're allowed to, in a COVID world,
wouldn't that be nice?
have a few drinks, and then, try and work out what they've got in common. Because I guarantee, unless your marketing is very scattergun, as in you are approaching, then your JLR's 1 minute and then your tiny sort of nursery another, then I'd say that they've got more in common than you would imagine. I would say there will be some core things. There will be some core requirements that they want that your business can meet, and I suppose it's just trying teasing out what that core thing is that your product supports, that what their real need is, that they've got in common.
Yeah, great. It's a good point, because you're absolutely right that we've decided to, because what we're actually doing, of course, is adding a lot of value to a business process. We're trying to stop something that could cost tens of millions of pounds.
Yes.
We are trying to educate the people, and you made that point earlier on about educating the customer, that what you're doing now as a preventative measure is going to save you a lot more money in the long run. So whilst I agree that we're not scattergun, we can't be scattergun, we're too small a business. And whilst I agree that we want to go for very, very high, not high caliber clients, but clients who see value in adding value to a service, which is what we do.
Yes.
So I think you're absolutely right, and we've recognised now. So, for example, we've targeted chartered surveyors in the RICS, because, of course, that's one of their jobs, is to actually work with clients to go out and find where there could be potential damage to property from invasive species. So, and of course, they tend to work with much. So we've been introduced by one of our surveyors as a partnership to one of the biggest consulting companies in the UK that I'd never heard of before. So, and of course, that's because we've gone for quite a niche, value-added approach into one of their verticals. So, of course, they're subject matter experts, and they're bringing us in as a niche on another subject matter expertise level to say, these are the guys you should be using, and this is why. So we tell them that story. My background is software, so I've been in software for 30 years. So, of course, we are experts in why you would implement a software solution. But I think, and hopefully Yanis will agree, that what we've recognised is something which is a very, very key area, but we've developed a solution for it. And obviously, a lot of the process is trying to educate those people to understand that they've got that problem. So that's why we've had to go really, very, very, very tech and very, very niche into the targeted audience that we're looking for.
Very interesting. Yeah. And do you work with large scale sort of landscaping businesses as well, or
we haven't actually, but they are on the radar, because there's only a small amount in my team, and of course we're trying to do the work as well as actually develop the platform, because the platform isn't just so it has an application for security as well, so we can do it for recognizing patterns on the ground, for example. If it was troop movements, it might be, are you looking for a man who's holding a gun or holding a broom, that type of thing. But we've had to, and Yanis and I have had this discussion, we've had to very, very specifically focus on one part, which is, in this case, it's the invasive species, because otherwise we're just going to lose focus. So we've got to try and make some revenue. We've got to get the customers on board. We've got to get that process rolling. So yeah, that was the reason that was done that way.
Right. Brilliant. I have a couple of contacts in large scale landscaping, you know, business to business landscaping. If you're interested, then
I would love an introduction, because all of our clients now are business to business guys. You know, we did out the lower guys. It's but that would be great. Thank you very much, Jill.
Just contact me through LinkedIn.
Yeah, will do. Okay. Super, thanks. Great stuff. Cheers. Thanks, Janice.
Pleasure. So I think, Chris, have you got a final question? Jill, are you okay for time, by the way?
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah.
Just thought I'd double check. So yeah, Chris, over to you for the final question.
It's a very quick question, but Jill, I hope you wouldn't find it too intrusive. Having done what you've done, what does someone like you do next?
Well, I'm looking for my next CEO opportunity. I want to ideally work in a majority PE-owned business. So, I mean, BGF took a minority stake in Click, which is a different kind of relationship than when a PE owns a majority stake, so that you're very focused on the business plan of getting to the next stage, whether that's another PE or a trade sale. So I'm looking for a business that's on that growth trajectory, and then looking for, and got investment, and then looking to scale to the next heights. So yeah, really interesting conversations I've been having. And I've learned such a lot about such a lot of businesses during that time. I'm close to a couple now. So, but I don't know. It's a very, very, very interesting and demanding process of getting a job that way.
Are you ready to travel?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, the two businesses I'm talking to at the moment, one is they're both software. One is software in the events industry, and the other is human capital software. And both of them, Yanis, are East Midlands, I have to say, rather than West Midlands, which is breaking my heart, to be honest. Because if I end up working in the East Midlands, that's going to be, very sad. I mean, even though it's commutable, I'm an absolute love, and I know everybody in the West Midlands now. So ideally, my ideal role would be in the West Midlands for sure.
I think that'll break my heart, Jill. We'll have to see what we can do. I'll have to pick you up a few P's and see if we can get in the West Mids. Really interesting. One final one from my point of view, actually, because this program, I guess, is part of getting Birmingham and West Mids to that next level. In your opinion, what do we need to do as a region to kind of level up?
Oh gosh, that's a really interesting one. I mean, I think there's so much going on now that's absolutely brilliant in Birmingham, and particularly in Birmingham Tech. And I love, please take advantage of all the meetups and everything that you get to do around here. I think being known as a tech hub, which I think we are more and more, will certainly, develop. But I mean, I was talking to somebody, a partner at KPMG the other day, who was lamenting the fact that business owners and a lot of founders are reluctant to take the next stage to scale their businesses. And I just, whether that is a malaise that affects the West Midlands more than other parts of the country, I doubt it. But I just think he said it's just very sad, because we would like to see more. I mean, of course, there have been so many successes. You only have to look at Gymshark, you can look at Lounge, you look at Grenade Bars, you look at all the businesses that have come out, Bromsgrove and Solihull recently. There are enormous ones, but it's like, well, which are the next ones that are going to be that? And what are the steps that they have to take to get to the next level, so that they're, top of the rich list, or whatever Ben Francis was, the rich giving list, or whatever he was at the weekend. So, that's what we need to do, isn't it? We need more successes like that.
Couldn't agree more. I think we need to celebrate our success more, for sure. And we've got some really interesting, Vox Pop Me, Crowd Property, I think, to name kind of two that are certainly kind of, the next wave of exciting tech businesses to come through. And there's a few more in that kind of mid-tier, actually, that are exciting. So yeah, that's really good to hear. Look, all that's left for me to do is thank you for your time today. It's been absolutely wonderful. So much insight. I think we've had a few people have to drop off, but you can see from the chat that they're so thankful for you, giving up your time to do this for us.
Brilliant.
And yeah, you kind of thumbs up and claps there all around. So yeah, kind of everyone else can, you know, join me in wishing Jill a thank you and also a great rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jill. Loved it.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks,
Eddie.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris.